Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, I will be welcoming the legendary Beverly Washburn. She is a client of my friend Lori Jacobson, and I'm having her on the show today to talk about all the roles she played. Starting in her child years as a child actress, she was in such classics as Shane, Superman and the Mole Men, the Lone Ranger movie, and of course that timeless Disney classic Old Yeller. And then she grew into a beautiful woman, and she was on every TV show you could possibly think of in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Shows like Leave It to Beaver, Gidget, Star Trek, those three in particular I want to ask about. And she was in the classic horror flick Spider Baby with the late, great Sid Haig and late, great Lon Chaney Jr. And I'm having her on the show today to talk about all that stuff. And I am just so blessed. So yeah, here is my interview with Beverly Washburn.
Hello?
Hi, Beverly.
Is this Tommy?
Yes, it is.
Hi, how are you?
I am wonderful. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Well, welcome to the show. This is just such an honor for me. I'm glad that Lori could connect us.
Oh, well, thank you. It's an honor for me as well. I'm very happy to be a part of your show.
Oh, thank you very much. So, going back in time, were you acting early? I know that you were acting early on, but how old exactly did you start acting?
I think the first movie that I did, I was 6 years old.
6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And did you fall in love with acting right away?
I did. It was just always fun for me. And I was fortunate because I had wonderful parents who allowed me to do something that I enjoyed doing, but they never forced me into it or made me do it. You know, there's that old cliche about Hollywood stage mothers, and
yeah,
you know, there's people like that who want their children to be in it, and you know, the children don't necessarily want to. So for me, it was nice because it was something I enjoyed doing, but it wasn't like I had to do it if I didn't want to.
Mm-hmm. Were your parents in the business?
No, they weren't really. My father had, you know, some sisters, my aunts, who were in vaudeville, but my parents themselves were never in show business. But my older brother did a lot of plays, and my older sister was a singer and dancer and acrobat, and she did a lot of shows and, you know, toured all over for the veterans. And so they were the only ones that were actually in the business aside from myself.
So it's in your blood a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So you were born in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I was born right in Hollywood, California, at the Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital. And I was born on Thanksgiving Day.
Oh.
And it doesn't always fall that way every year, but when I was born, it was actually on Thanksgiving Day.
I know, the Thanksgiving's a strange holiday. It's always on a different day, but no matter what...
It's always the last Thursday, depending
yeah.
on how it falls. But
it's either the last Thursday or the next to last Thursday.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. One of your earliest roles was Superman and the Mole Men.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites. You know, I was so young that, you know, for me, I didn't really know who George Reeves was, but I sure knew who Superman was. So for me, that was the thrill, you know, because I don't know if you saw that particular show that I was in. It was Superman and the Mole Men, which was, you know, the original pilot. It was a two-parter.
Mm-hmm.
And in the scene, I'm in bed, and these two little mole men crawl in through my bedroom window, and we play ball and everything. And so George Reeves, Superman, was not actually in that scene, and I was only in the one scene. So we didn't have a scene together, but he was on the set and, you know, in his Superman costume. And so I was so young, I thought he really was Superman. So for me, the thrill was, not to work with George Reeves, but to be, there with Superman. And it wasn't until I became an adult, looking back, and I thought how fortunate I was that I got to work with George Reeves, because I didn't know who he was at the time.
Yeah.
Same with The Lone Ranger. I did a film at Warner Brothers.
Yep.
In, I think it was 1955 or 56, and it was the feature film, The Lone Ranger, and of course that was Clayton Moore. But again, for me, the thrill was not to be working with Clayton Moore, but to be with The Lone Ranger, because I was young, and you have a different concept of who you're working with and stuff. Like, I was directed by Cecil B. DeMille in The Greatest Show on Earth, and I didn't have a clue who he was, and Frank Capra directed me in a movie I did with Bing Crosby, and George Stevens directed me in Shane. But, when you're so young, you don't appreciate all that because it doesn't have the same meaning. And so as I became an adult, it was then that I realized how fortunate I was to have worked with so many icons, and to rectify them and to work with them. And, but I was just too young to appreciate it at the time.
Yeah, you worked with the best of the best, and George Reeves, that poor man was typecast. You know?
For sure. Well, what was strange is shortly after I did Superman and the Mole Men, there was a TV show. I did a lot of these anthology shows, and this one, I think it was either on the Schlitz Playhouse, or it might have been Ford Theater. I can't remember now, it was so long ago. But anyway, it was a show called Heart of Gold, and it starred Edmund Gwynn, who know who he was. Yeah. And George Reeves was my father, and Anita Louise was my mother, and Tommy Reddick, who later became the little boy on Lassie, who played Jeff. He and I played brother and sister. And it was a very sweet story. We were young, and supposedly, what happens is we go outside to play, and there's a snowman, and I take off this necklace that I had, this locket that had a heart, and I put the heart in the snowman, and then it comes to life. And that was played by Edmund Gwynn. And it was just a really sweet story. Well, at the time, George Reeves played my father, and I was too young. I think I was like 7 or something like that. I didn't really realize who he was. And so the crew were just kind of joking around, and they were referring to him as Superman. And in my young mind, I couldn't quite get why they were calling him Superman. And I asked my mother, why are they calling him Superman? So she told me that he really was Superman, but that he was just play acting to be my father. So that was a good answer for me. I was like, oh, true, that's a good answer. So, but it was just strange that, because you wouldn't really recognize him. In that show, they had him with a mustache and glasses, and it was one of the few roles that he played other than being Superman, because as you said, he was so typecast,
Yeah. And Jeff Corey is in that, too.
Yeah, right.
One of the great acting teachers, yeah.
He was one of the best, that's for sure.
So then you did the timeless classic Shane, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and that we filmed most of that in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And, of course, that was with Alan Ladd and Gene Arthur. And I played one of the Lewis children, Edgar Buchanan, was my father in that. And he was such a nice man. And so we filmed that for 3 months. And so my mother and I, got to go to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. But I remember they didn't fly us there. They put us on a train, which was really fun. And it was so beautiful there with the Teton Mountains. And, it was a wonderful memory.
Why were you uncredited in that movie?
I don't know. I guess it was such a big cast, and I wasn't really a name, and I was just one of the Lewis children. So I do have stills from it, but I don't know. They didn't put my name on the cast, did they?
Yeah, it said on IMDb that you were uncredited. Was Jack Palance scary in person?
Yeah, I mean, he of course was a very nice man, but his looks were rather intimidating for young children,
Yeah.
But he was very nice to all of us. So when you first see him, it was a little intimidating because he had that kind of scary look about him. He was such a wonderful character actor, but he was very nice.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Then you were in the underrated classic, The Juggler.
Yeah, and that was with Kirk Douglas.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful film. And then many years later, I was fortunate enough to do 3 episodes of The Streets of San Francisco. And that was with, Michael Douglas and Carl Malden. And it was such a thrill for me because I was able to tell Michael, who was not that famous yet, that was kind of the beginning of his career, Streets of San Francisco. And he was just the nicest guy. He really was, and as was Carl Malden. And so it was a thrill for me to be able to tell Michael that I had worked with his dad when I was 8 years old, and be.
Can you believe that Kirk Douglas is still alive?
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think isn't he like 101 or something?
He'll be 103 in December.
Will he really? Oh,
yeah.
Incredible. Yeah, I know. It's just because this past year's been quite sad, losing so many people. But, I'm glad to see that he's still alive and seems pretty well, although I believe he's in a wheelchair now.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But I think The Juggler is one of his finest performances, and he was very much robbed of an Academy Award nomination for it.
Yeah, it's not a really well-known film,
Yeah.
For me, it was great fun to be on that, and again, sounding redundant, but I didn't really know who Kirk Douglas was. When you're a child, you don't really have that same concept. To me, a very nice man that I was working with, he was, that I was in the film with, but I didn't have the, I don't know, I just didn't realize that he was such a big star.
Mm-hmm. John Banner from Hogan's Heroes is in it.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. And
very good.
Edward Dmytryk, classic director at Columbia, he must have been great to work with.
Yeah, he was great. And then Stanley Kramer was the producer, and he sent me the nicest letter that I still have, just telling me, that I was wonderful in the role. And it was just so sweet that he sent me that letter, Stanley Kramer. And again, at the time, I thought it was a nice letter, but I didn't realize, exactly who Stanley Kramer was. I do now. And, of course, I treasure the letter. But
that's wonderful. I hope you have it framed.
I do.
Nice. And then comes the immortal classic, Old Yeller.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite films. In fact, sadly, Tommy Kirk, who played Travis in it, he and I are the only two still alive from that film.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just over here for dinner this past Sunday night.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he lives here in Vegas where I live, and we get together periodically. He's a bachelor. He's never been married, and so he's alone. And we're still friends after all these years. After like 63 years, still friends. And he's just a really good friend of mine. And so we try to get together, every month or two for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And so he comes over here because he likes a home-cooked meal every now and then. So that's what we do.
I always loved him in The Shaggy Dog.
Wasn't he great? Yeah, he's such a wonderful actor. But he's completely retired now.
Yeah.
He doesn't, really want to act anymore. He enjoyed it, while he did it. But he likes just his solitude, and, he's just a really sweet guy, but he doesn't like to, in fact, it's so funny because he doesn't have a computer. He won't do emails. He doesn't like cell phones. He's kind of old school, and so he's so cute because he actually writes me letters, and he lives like 20 minutes away, but he doesn't like to be on the phone, and he doesn't have a computer, and he refuses to get one, and so...
Some people are like that, yeah.
Yeah, he's old school, but yeah, he's very dear, and he's healthy and well and happy and content, and I so much, treasure his friendship for, all these years.
Oh, that's great. And Kevin Corcoran, who we lost a few years ago.
I know, that was so sad. I went to his memorial, and I had seen him. They did a big memorial and celebration for celebration of life for Annette Funicello, Disney lot, and they unveiled, the stage where they used to film the Mickey Mouse Club. They renamed it the Annette Funicello stage, and Kevin was there, and we talked, and we hadn't seen each other in quite a few years, and he was so dear, and he told me that he had been battling cancer, but that he was in remission and doing well, and so I was deeply saddened when I got word that he had died from cancer. He was the youngest one, younger than Tommy and younger than me, and it was quite a loss to have him die. He was such a sweet guy, and he was so adorable in that movie.
Yeah. And he was also in The Shaggy Dog, too, playing his brother in that.
Yeah, he did a lot of stuff, and a lot of people called him Moochie,
Yeah. Yeah. What was Fess Parker like to work with?
He was terrific. I didn't really get to know him well because we didn't really have scenes together, but he was, on the lot and on stage and everything, and he was such a kind man, and he had, his own winery, and years later, I called out, to where his winery was and said that it was going to be coming there, and he was so dear. He, put out the red carpet early, and there were 6 of us. It was Tony Dow, who played, Wally on Leave It to Beaver, and his wife, and then a couple of our friends, and so he welcomed us and let us have our own private, wine tasting, and he was such a nice man. And I saw him when Sharon Baird, who was one of the Musketeers, and I are best friends, and so we had done, it was I can't remember the actual reason for why we were there, but we were in Orlando at Disney World for something or other, I can't remember, and they had a big luncheon with all the Musketeers and, other people that had worked at Disney, and so we were invited, and at the luncheon, Fess Parker was there, and this was before I went to the winery, I hadn't seen him in quite a few years, and I thought, he probably won't even remember me because it was so long ago. So anyway, I went up to him, and before I could even get my name out, he stood up and gave me a big hug, and he said, "Oh, Beverly, it's so good to see you." And then we talked, and then it was then that he said, "If you ever get, to my winery, please give me a call, and, I'll have you come out and have a private wine tasting and all that." So I took him up on his offer, and And sure enough, that's what he did. He was just a very kind, soft-spoken, gentle gentleman.
Mm-hmm. It was Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did talk to Sharon Baird last month, and she,
Did you?
yeah, she mentioned that you two were very close.
Yeah, she was just here about a week ago. She came. She had gone to Fresno for one of the Musketeers, Karen Pendleton, the youngest.
Yeah.
There's Karen and Cubby, and sadly, Karen passed away. So she went to the memorial, and then she, rather than flying back to Reno, where she lives, she flew here and stayed here for a week, and we had a lot of fun together. And in fact, I just spoke with her last night. And yeah, so we try to get together at least once or twice a year. We've lost so many friends, sadly, mostly to cancer, and some younger than we are. And so we made a vow that we wouldn't let a lot of time go by without seeing each other.
Oh, that's beautiful. Because in this day and age, friendship is so rare now.
Oh, I know, and it's so special and so important to have friends. And she and I have been friends for over 60 years. When I was doing Old Yeller, she was doing the Mickey Mouse Club. So we had school together in the big red trailer that they had on the lot at Disney Studios. And we just remained friends all these years. I was the maid of honor at her wedding.
Oh.
Yeah, so we've been friends for a long, long time. And then she wrote something really nice for my book. I do have a book out called Real Tears, Take Two. And Tony Dow wrote the foreword for it, and also Paul Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
Played Jeff on the Donna Reed Show.
Yep. I met Paul Peterson when I was 6 years old. He was signing at a mall in my area, in the Bay Area, and he was very nice to us and stuff.
Oh,
and
great.
He loved the fact that my mother's name is Donna.
Oh, cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, he and I are still friends. I feel quite blessed that, I've maintained these friendships over the years, with Tony Dow and Paul Peterson and Sharon Baird and Tommy Cook and John Provost and Jeannie Russell, who was on Dennis the Menace.
Yep.
So it's nice, to keep in touch and maintain a friendship.
Oh yeah, always. In addition to the movies, you were a lot like on so many classic TV shows in the 50s and 60s. Leave It to Beaver was one of them, probably the greatest squeaky clean sitcom of all time.
I know. It was, it was a thrill for me because at the time I had not met Tony, and as with every other teenage girl in America, I think, I had a crush on Wally Cleaver. So I was actually doing an episode of Thriller, the Boris Karloff.
Yeah.
And I was working on the stage right next door to Leave It to Beaver. And Barbara Billingsley, who played June Cleaver, of course, who was just the dearest lady in the world, many years prior to that, when I was 11, I did a short-lived series called Professional Father, a live sitcom done at CBS Television City every Saturday. And Barbara Billingsley was my mother on it, and Steve Dunn was the father. And so I worked on that for 26 weeks. So I knew Barbara very well. So I was working on Thriller, and I was just dying to go next door, of course, to say hello to Barbara because I adored her. But also, I thought, here's my opportunity to meet Wally Cleaver. And so when I went next door, on the door, it said, closed that, do not enter. I thought, oh, darn it, how am I going to get in there? So the guard was there, and I told him that I was working, on the stage right next door to them, and that I was doing an episode of Thriller, and that I had played Barbara Billingsley's daughter on a series, and I wondered if I could just go in to say hello to her. So I was very lucky that he decided to let me go on, into the stage. So I went in there and saw Barbara immediately, and we hugged and everything, and then I asked her if she could introduce me to Tony, because I had this huge crush on him. So, of course, she did, and I just thought he was so adorable. Well, as luck would have it, the casting director happened to be on the set that day, and they were getting ready to cast an episode called The Blind Date Committee. So he saw me talking to Barbara and Tony, and so he came over, and Barbara introduced me to him and told him that I was a really good actress and all that, because she was so sweet to say that. So he asked me if I would come back the next day to read, come on into his office and read for the part, on the Blind Date Committee. So I did, and then I got the part, and that's how I got it. It was just kind of a fluky thing, that I happened to be in the right place at the right time, I guess. And then ever since then, Tony and I just remain friends. And in fact, right now, they're trying to get funding for a movie that Tony and I will be playing husband and wife. It's a family film, and Richard Benjamin, you know who he is, of course. Married to Paula Prentice. He'll be in it, and his son, Ross Benjamin, will be playing our son-in-law. And then Lori Jacobson, who you, of course, know, John Provost's wife, who's a wonderful actress herself. She'll be doing a little cameo in it. And so they're right now in the process of getting all the funding, and it's hopefully we'll be filming in the spring. That's our hope and our goal.
Oh, that'll be a good one if it does.
Yeah, it's a really sweet film. It's called December Dilemma, and it's a family film, that it's good for the whole family. It'll make you laugh. It'll make you cry. It's sweet. It's spiritual. It's just a family feel-good, wonderful film. So that's our hope right now that we're working on.
Wow, that's wonderful. What about working with Boris Karloff on Thriller?
Well, I didn't get to actually work with him because he wasn't in the episode, but he was the host. And so the fun part was that I got to meet him because, in fact, it was just on TV last week. Thanks to all these old nostalgia TV stations, they have Decades and Antenna TV and Me TV and all that. And so they bring back these old black and white shows, which is kind of fun. But anyway, it starred Jeanette Nolan, who was just brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
And James Griffith and Pippa Scott and Tommy Nolan. And so what they did was we live in this old kind of broken down, haunted kind of mansion. And so they had each of us sit, in a different chair or sofa, whatever, in the living room of this mansion. And then Boris Karloff introduces the episode. And the camera would pan around to each of us as he introduced us. He'd say in tonight's episode stars Pippa Scott, and it would show her, and then it would pan over to Jeanette Nolan and James Griffith and to Tommy Nolan and to me. And then he said in tonight's episode, it was called Parasite Mansion. So we all got to meet him, but he was only there for that, that one little segment where he introduced the beginning of the show. So I didn't get to work with him per se, but to meet him, and that was a thrill. I was always a big fan of his.
Yeah, I just interviewed his daughter earlier this month. And
what did you do? Oh, fun.
Oh, yeah, she had a lot of good stories about him, and it was definitely one of the highlights, I have to say.
Yeah, oh, that's terrific. Yeah. So I was thrilled to get to meet him.
You did a couple episodes of Gidget.
Yeah, with Sally Field. Yeah, that was fun. She was adorable. And her stepdad, Jack Mahoney, was the one who actually got me into the business, just ironically.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel that she would be successful?
Oh, yeah. Well, I thought she already was pretty successful when she was doing Gidget. And she was really fun to work with, real easy, easygoing, sweet, just a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
To be on that show. Same with Patty Duke. She was just amazing. I got to do the Patty Duke show. And in fact, I write about what happened when I worked on that show in my book, because she was so down to earth and so sweet. And I was, on the first day on this set, I played one of her girlfriends. And it was an episode called Kathy Leaves Home. I don't remember. Patty Leaves Home, but not really. Or Kathy Leaves. I don't know. She was twins on them. I can't remember now. I'm old. I'm sorry. I can't remember the name. But anyway, I was out by the wardrobe truck, and Patty saw me, and so she walked up to me, and she said, "Hi, I'm Patty. Welcome to my show," which was so sweet, because of course I knew who she was. And then she said, "What's going on?" And I said, "Well, they're trying to find me something to wear in the scene." And she looked at me, and we were exactly the same height. We were both only 5 feet tall. And she looked at me, and her exact words, she said, "Well, come on in with me." And so we went into the trailer inside, and she was looking at me, and then turned to the wardrobe lady, and her exact words, she said, "Hell, give her something of mine to wear. She can fit into my clothes." And so I was so stunned by that, because there's not a lot of actors that would allow another actor to wear something of theirs, and she was so, it just thrilled me. It was so cute and generous, and nice of her to say that. So in the scene that I'm in with her, I was actually wearing something of hers. So that was fun.
Yeah. I remember when you did the original Star Trek series, you had that really short haircut.
Yeah, well, there's a story behind it. Because I've had people go, "What were you thinking? Why is your hair that way?" But what had happened is, just before that, I had done a movie called Pit Stop. And it was with Brian Donlevy, Ellen McRae, who later became Ellen Burstyn, who was quite famous, but at the time her name was called, she went by Ellen McRae. And my brother George Washburn was in it as well. And Sid Haig, who sadly we just lost recently.
Yes.
And Dick Davalos. So in it, there's a scene where I'm in, this goes back a long ways, where I'm in bed with Dick Davalos. But it wasn't like a sexy scene, because it was so long ago.
Yeah.
But it's a wonder they didn't put us in twin beds, because it was very innocent back then. But anyway, so I've always been blonde, and Dick Davalos was blonde. And we both had the exact same color hair. So Jack Hill, who was the writer and director, said, "I think it would look better if you had a different color hair, so you don't blend together. You both photograph with the exact same color hair. Do you mind if we dyed your hair?" So I didn't care. I said, "That's fine." So they sent me to this salon in Beverly Hills. Now, mind you, this was, like 50, 60 years ago. And all the chemicals at the time were nothing like they are now. So they put this dye on my hair, and all my hair fell out. It was just like coming out of the clumps. So they had no choice but to just cut it all off. And so it was really, really short, because it was coming, out in clumps. And so it was almost like a boy's haircut. And then it was shortly after that my agent called and said they, had an interview for me to read for a part on Star Trek, which at the time was not very popular. It was like the second season. and hadn't really come into its own yet. And so anyway, I read for the part, and I got the part. And anyway, that's why my hair was that way. It was because it had all fallen out just before that.
Yeah.
That's all about.
It wasn't bad. I mean, I thought it was kind of sexy.
Really?
Yeah.
I know. I thought it was kind of weird, but anyway, that's that's the story behind that short hair. And then that at the time I had no idea that Star Trek would be such an iconic show. I mean, it's all over the world, and the Star Trek fans are just, amazing. They're so loyal and so dedicated, and it was because of the fans that, it came back on the air, because they all, wrote in and protested that it was, been canceled and all that, and so they brought it back, and then it became even more popular than the first time,
Oh, yeah, it's a phenomenon how it just, all these years later, it's just really touched the culture.
I know, it's amazing to me, because I was in an episode called The Deadly Years, where we all get old, and then I died of old age.
Mm-hmm.
And so they do all these conventions and everything, and so anyway, I died. I always say I wasn't even wearing red. Really? That was like the key thing. If you're wearing a red uniform, you're like doomed. You're going to die on that show. But anyway, so I had been invited to several conventions, and the fans are just amazing. I just was in the one episode, but they know every episode and every character and every character's name, and they even knew my dialogue. It was just, they'd come up to me and just look at me and say, "That's a stupid place to hang a mirror," which was one of my lines. And I'm thinking, how did you know that? It's incredible.
Yeah.
They're amazing fans.
Yeah. And then you got to be in the horror classic Spider Baby.
I know. That's another one that's just, it's just amazing to me, because it's, it came and went years ago, and it was a really low budget. And I always tease that it was like $11 or something, but it was actually, it was like, I think it was $65,000, which is nothing. And we filmed the whole thing in 13 days, and it was just, I really wanted that role, because it was such a stretch for me. I had never played a role like that where, we kill people and stuff.
Yeah.
And plus, I wanted the opportunity, of course, to work with Lon Chaney. That was the main reason I wanted that role, so I was so happy when I got it. But it just kind of sat there. After we did it, something happened that I'm not really privy to, but something to do with litigation or something, because the money was put up by two investors that were not really in the entertainment field. They were attorneys, but they wanted to make a film. So they put up the money, and then something happened,
mm-hmm.
which I don't really know exactly, but it just sat there for years. And then Quentin Tarantino, who was a good friend of Jack Hill's,
mm-hmm.
who wrote and directed the film, saw it. And for some reason, he just really loved it. And so it was actually, partially because of Quentin Tarantino. He was instrumental in getting it, back out there. And they redid, because it was kind of grainy, because it was so long ago. And they, I guess, digitalized it, or whatever it is that they do to make the film sharp and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And brought it out on DVDs. And now it's like, amazing to me. To this day, I get fan mail from Spider Baby. And it's just, I don't know. It has a huge following, and it's like all over the world, actually. And people, for some reason, just really embrace it. And it's just such a, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's just a very campy, kind of quirky little, fun movie. It's not, we kill people, but it's not like a gory, bloody,
Yeah.
scary kind of film. It's more tongue-in-cheek, kind of campy. And for some reason, people just really seem to love it, and I'm so happy that they do.
Yeah, I saw it one time years ago. It came out the same time as In Cold Blood. It has that, neo-noir feel to it with black and white.
Well, it's different now because it's really sharp. They just really fixed it up. I don't know how they did it, but it looks a lot better now. Now it's out on, DVD and Blu-ray and all that. And they've got memorabilia, T-shirts, and keychains and dog tags and all kinds of things. And I did a horror convention this past, I think it was in May, in Mars, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't believe how many people just loved the Spider Baby. That's all I wanted to talk about. It was really funny. And then I did another horror convention a few months prior to that, and Jack Hill and I were invited.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was the year before, I can't remember. Jack Hill, who wrote it and directed it, who's in his 80s now, and he and I were invited. Sid Haig was not available for that particular one; he was doing something else.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just Jack and myself, and so we were doing this convention, and they were interviewing us, and then they showed the film, and then they asked us if we would go upstairs to the penthouse because they wanted to do, I don't know if it was a podcast or I can't remember exactly if it was for a local TV show or whatever it was for, I don't remember, but they asked if we could just sit there and the moderator would interview us much like you are. And so he turned to Jack and he said, Jack, I have to ask you, Spider Baby is such a quirky little kind of weird, out there kind of bizarre little film. And he says, I'm just curious, like, how did that come about? Like, how would you sit down and come to write something like this little film? And so Jack says, well, I was smoking a lot of weed back then. It was hilarious because that was the last thing they expected to come out of his mouth. He's like in his 80s.
Yeah.
It was really cute. Everybody just died laughing. Well, that explains it, I guess.
Yeah.
It was funny.
I was reading that you got the role because you were in a grocery store and some guy was staring at you.
Well, it was very strange because, back then, of course, I had an agent, and typically your agent would call you. Where did you read that? That's weird. I didn't know anybody knew that.
That was actually a quote of yours on IMDb.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know that I... Well, anyway, what happened is I was at the Ralph's grocery store in L.A., and it seemed like every time I turned, the corner on an aisle, there was this guy kind of staring at me. And at first I thought, that's kind of strange, I hope he's not I don't know who he is. Well, finally he came up to me, and his name was Bart Patton, and he was very nice. Anyway, he said, I'm sorry. He said, I guess you thought I was, stalking you. He said, I'm not. He said, but I wanted to get a closer look at you because you look familiar. Aren't you an actress? And I said, yes. And he said, well, I know this is strange, but he said, we're doing a little film. And he said, it's called The Cannibal Orgy. And I thought, oh, my goodness, this is going to be weird. And because that was the title of it in the beginning. They later changed it to Spider Baby. And so I thought, oh, this is weird. And he said, we're going to be filming and we're going to have some auditions, on Friday or whatever day. And I'd love for you to come in and read for the role. And I'm thinking, this is just too weird, right? And then he proceeded to say, Lon Chaney Jr. is going to be starring in it. And I thought, really? Because then it sounded a little more interesting because I love Lon Chaney. And then he said, let me give you all the information. He said, I'm sure you have an agent, so have them call and set up an appointment. Well, then it sounded more legitimate because it wasn't like he asked me for my home phone number or asked if he could bring the script to my house or anything like that. So once he said that, I thought, well, maybe it is legitimate. when I got home. And he said he would check into it. And then he called back and he said, yeah, it's a legitimate film, and they're holding the auditions. And so he set up an appointment for you to go in and read. So I went in to read, and that's when I met Jack Hill. And anyway, he cast me in it, but it was just kind of a strange way to get cast, but that's how it all came about.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
You couldn't get away with doing that today.
No. Well, I mean, at first I thought it was weird, but I mean, had he asked for my home phone number or asked for, to bring the script by or something, then I would have known that it wasn't legitimate. But when he actually gave me the information for my agent to check out, then I knew. And so Bart actually was, part of the whole, film. He was the production manager, and his wife at the time, Mary Mitchell, was the girl who played the secretary in the film. So anyway, it was really fun, and I just loved working with Lon Chaney.
Oh yeah, I reached out to his grandson this Halloween to interview him. I never heard back and stuff, but I hope to in the future. That would be great.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how young Jill Banner was when she passed. What was she like to work with?
It was wonderful. It was heart-wrenching when she was killed in an automobile accident on Pacific Coast Highway. And she was actually dating Marlon Brando at the time.
Oh.
And, and at her memorial service, he got up to speak, and he said that she was one of the few ladies that he actually truly loved.
Oh.
But they kept their romance quiet. Nobody really knew. But anyway, that was her first film, and I thought she did such an amazing job, and I really think had she lived, she could have gone on to do so much more. She was beautiful and talented and sweet, and we got along great. And it sounds cliche and corny, but we all were pretty much a family. But the filming was done so quickly that we didn't have, a lot of time to bond and hang out together because it was such a low budget. We, had to get everything done in such a short time. But it was a wonderful time in my life, and I treasure, every day of that, and getting to work with Sid and Jack and meeting Lon Chaney. And it's just sad that Lon Chaney and Jill Banner didn't live long enough to see how, how people embrace that film today and how well received it is and how people really love it, and
yeah,
grateful to have been a part of it. It's such a quirky little film, but
yeah.
it was really fun to do.
And Sid Haig, oh my God, I got to meet him at one of his last conventions back in April.
Aww.
And I could sense that something was wrong. He was just very tired. He was slurring his words and stuff. But I'll tell you this, though, he had his son and his grandson helping him, and they looked just like him.
Yeah. So the one thing about Sid, he loved his fans and he loved his family.
Yeah.
And he was just a dear man, and he had that crazy signature. I don't know if you saw him sign his autograph.
Oh yes.
It's like a symbol. It's not like Sid Haig. It's like a symbol that nobody could ever duplicate. It was really cute, and people loved him so much. He had a huge fan base, and he was just dear. And I was so deeply saddened when he passed away. It was a huge loss. He was a terrific human being, he really was. And as we all know, we all have to die, and it's part of life. But sometimes you hear somebody that passes, and people will say, "Oh, that's too bad," or "Oh, I'm sorry," or "Oh, that's a bummer," or whatever. But then there's some people that, you hear they're passing, and it just touches you because there's somebody that made a difference, that they mattered and they were kind, and it was definitely one of those. So.
I know I was glad when his career got bigger than it ever had been before, because I just thought, he was a very underrated character actor for so many years. But then when Rob Zombie started casting him in his movies, it just made him bigger than he ever was. And I'm glad that he got to experience that.
Yes, absolutely. I am as well. And I was reading People magazine a few years ago, just, at home one day. It was raining, and I picked up a People magazine. And there was an article about Rob Zombie, and they asked him to list his 5 favorite horror films of all time. And Spider Baby was number 2.
Really?
And just, wow, that was just a thrill. That was really fun.
Do you remember what number 1 was?
It was some obscure movie. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it was, I'd have to look it up. I got the magazine somewhere, but it was a really obscure one, even more obscure than Spider Baby, that a true horror films would know right away.
Oh, crazy. So did you get to a point where you got tired of the acting business and you wanted to do something else? Beverly, you're breaking up.
Oh yeah. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yeah.
Oh, I don't know, maybe I moved my phone. No, there was a time in my life where it quieted down. I got married, and my husband was in the hotel business, and he got transferred to Texas. We lived in Dallas for a few years, so I didn't do as much. But I never once said, I'm done with it, or I don't like it anymore, or I don't want to do it anymore. It's kind of that old adage about, once it's in your blood, you just kind of love to do it. So that's why I'm so hoping this film that we're trying to put together comes to fruition, because it would be really fun to do that. I just did a little cameo along with Ann Robinson. You know her?
Oh, I know Ann, yes.
Yeah, I love her. She's so dear. She and I played sisters, and we did a little cameo in a film called Tales of, oh gosh, my brain. I'm having a senior moment. Not Frankenstein. Tales of...
let me look it up here. Yeah, Tales of Frankenstein.
Okay, yeah, we'll cut this part out. Oh my gosh, I'm having a senior moment. But anyway, it was just a one-day shoot, and we played sisters. But it was really fun to do that. And I narrated a couple of documentaries in the last couple of years, and so I'm still, dabbling in it. And we're getting ready to do. It's not really a one-woman show, because I have a wonderful guy who's my host. His name is Jay Nagel, and he's done a lot of stuff in New York and Chicago. And we've done it 4 times now, and we're kind of taking it on the road. And we show clips of some of my old shows, and it's talking about memories of things that I've done in the past, and it's been kind of fun. So I'm still dabbling in it,
Mm-hmm.
and because it's something that I've always enjoyed, and I feel so blessed and grateful that I'm still above ground after all these years. We all get older, but I'm still doing what I love to do, and I'm truly grateful for that.
Oh, that's just inspiring, I have to say, Beverly. Very inspiring. And that movie you mentioned, you're going to do with Tony Dow, I hope that movie happens, because that would be just so great to see,
Oh, thank you. Well, I'll keep you posted if it happens. I'll let you know. So we're getting close. We're just waiting for a couple more things to, fall into place, and then we're hoping to start filming in the spring. So I will sure let you know. And I think it's a film that people will love, because it's a family film that everybody can watch. It's not, you know.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any upcoming convention appearances or anything?
I'm supposed to do one in June in Reno, I know. And then every year I do this thing. It's called Throwback, which is, if I get this right now, the Society to Preserve Entertainment, Radio, Television. Wait a minute. I can't remember the whole thing, but anyway, the gist of it is we do old radio shows, like we do reenactments of old-time radio shows, and we do it every year in Seattle. That one's called REP, which is the Radio Enthusiast of Puget Sound, and also ART, which is American Radio Theater. And they're all kind of like similar companies that do these radio reenactments. And so this one will be in 2 weeks in Costa Mesa. And Margaret O'Brien was there last year. She's adorable.
Oh.
And Richard Hurd.
Mm-hmm.
And so this year, Allison Arngrim, from Little House on the Prairie, will be there. And Stuffy Singer, who worked with Jack Benny. He played Dennis Day as a kid. And let's see, Camden Singer, who does a lot of commercials and TV, who's Stuffy's daughter. She's wonderful. And Jim Beaver, do you know who he is? He's on a series. He's a wonderful actor. So,
sounds familiar.
Yeah, so we do, we do it in front of an audience, and we do it just the way they did back in the days of old-time radio, in front of an audience, but with, the old-time microphones, and they have the sound effects and the music. And so we're going to do a recreation of the Jack Benny show, and I'm going to be playing Mary Livingston. And usually we do my friend Irma, and I play Irma. And and Jeannie Russell from Dennis the Menace will also be there.
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing Six Shooter and reenactments of the old radio show called Ethel and Albert, which is hilarious. And so I do that every year, and that's coming up. So
that's gotta be fun.
Busy,
Yeah, that's gotta be fun.
It is. It's really fun.
I love the old Jack Benny program.
Oh, he was the best. Yeah, he was just. I was so fortunate to know him up until the time he died. And I toured with him. In 1970 or 71, we played Vegas and Tahoe, and in fact, it's on YouTube. And our little skit, part of it, they cut it down for YouTube. But and when I first worked with him, that's on YouTube also. I don't know if you saw that one. I come up out of the audience and ask for his autograph.
I'll check it out because I love all that.
Oh, it's a fun show, yeah. I think it's billed as Jack and the Little Girl. That's if you just, typed in Jack Benny, and then I think it's Jack and the Little Girl or something. And it's a very funny bit, and I think I was about 8 at the time, and it was back in the days of live TV.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of dialogue, but, as a kid, it's easy. Most kids, have that ability to memorize dialogue. So.
Mm-hmm. I'll check it out. And
okay.
Beverly, this has been just an amazing honor. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
You're so nice, Tommy. I was so thrilled when, Lori asked me if I would do it, and I said, of course, I'd be honored, and I so appreciate you having me on your show. It means a lot to me because it's fun to reminisce about old times, and as you get older, it's one thing that, we can keep is our memories, and to be able to share them with others, it's really nice. And so I believe I should be thanking you instead of you thanking me. So.
It's give and take, and
thank you.
And I hope that movie gets made, and I hope Lori books you at a convention in California. It would be great to come to meet you.
Well, I think we are doing one, but I can't. Lori would know the date. I can't remember. it's coming up. It might be January or February. I don't know. She could tell you, though. She knows, and it's somewhere in Northern California. Where are you exactly?
I'm in Redding, California, and I spend a lot of time going to the Bay Area where I'm from, or I go to Sacramento or LA.
Okay, well, when I talk to Lori next, or if you do, I'll ask her, and we'll certainly let you know. And if it's close enough, it would be wonderful to meet you in person.
Oh, that would be lovely. You have yourself a great day, Beverly.
You as well, Tommy. Thank you so much.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Beverly Washburn. Ain't she a sweetheart? Thank you so much, Beverly and Lori, for connecting us. She's a sweet, humble lady, and I hope I get to meet her someday. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, add me as a friend on Facebook, join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all the time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes!